Because if not, you're looking at Chris Sale. He needs Tommy John. He might not be able to get Tommy John until the fall, which is going to put him out like the next 2 seasons for the Red Sox. So, that's
Right.
that's a bit of a gray area here as to all these athletes getting special treatments. Obviously, they're having really easy access to the testing. So that's just a question where it's like, hey, if somebody's getting hurt right now and they need surgery, especially with Tommy John, which is a selective surgery, it could be setting your franchise back more than a year.
Yeah, there are certain legalities there, and I'm sure that if he decides and the organization decides to go through with the surgery as quickly as possible, I would assume that he would be willing to transport himself to a location outside of these main metropolitan hubs. So for the Northeast, obviously, New York City has become the epicenter of the Corona stuff, and for the West Coast, it's places like Seattle and Los Angeles. So a lot of these, what these athletes do is they go to certain doctors, James Andrews being one of them, and they'll fly themselves remote and they'll go to these physicians and have these surgeries done in that location, and then they'll fly back and rejoin the team and do rehab and stuff. And so, he shouldn't be taking space in a hospital, especially for people who definitely need it. But if he's willing to go that route, like a significant portion of athletes do, then it's fine. Yeah, I'm fine with it.
The other, thing here is NFL. The show must go on with the NFL. They, reach a new CBA, which is a 10-year deal. They start the league year. Free agency is going crazy. The biggest news, obviously, is Tom Brady leaving the Patriots. I'll get your takes on that in a second, but I want to touch on Tom Brady. He signed with the Bucs, but the holdup here is he's getting a physical in New York. That doesn't seem like A, a smart idea, or B, a good resource of our medical field, that he's got to be taking up space in New York to get a physical, to get his contract signed. That doesn't make sense to me, Joe.
It doesn't make sense to me either. If you really want, again, you're just touching on what I just said, for these teams and these organizations who want to go through with that process, then the best means of being able to do so is to find these locations, remote or elsewhere, where you're away from the severity of what is going on and you're basically essentially not taking up space. Now, in the case of Brady, this is just like a physical. For Sale, it's much more complicated because he's getting a procedure done and he needs the surgery, as opposed to Brady, who's probably just going through a mandatory, doctor's visit, physical.
Do you think Tom Brady is being tested for the coronavirus in his physical?
Probably.
100%.
I would imagine. Well, this is also a gray area because how many athletes do we have to test? I mean, is that a significant waste of resources?
Right.
In my opinion, if this is really, really, really truthfully as serious as most people are describing it as, then I believe, yes, it is a waste of resources. And a couple of minutes ago, I was coming across my timeline, and we had mentioned the Lakers and LeBron James. And so JaVale McGee, who is one of LeBron's teammates in LA with the Lakers, he's had asthma, and he tested negative for the virus. So you see, in that case, I'm okay with somebody like him getting tested because of the underlying condition and the exposure he's had to other athletes. But do we really necessarily need every single one of these athletes and every single one of these coaches being tested on each of these teams? I don't really think so.
Sean Payton tested positive. I don't know. What was the backstory there? That he just experienced the symptoms and he seemed to easily get a test.
I think he encountered somebody that he knew had the virus. And I mean, Payton's a different case because obviously coaches are a little bit older, so it varies from person to person. In his case, then yes, obviously that's a good thing that he was able to get tested, and he's already quarantined himself for, I think, roughly a week probably a little bit longer. So that's okay with me. But we shouldn't be wasting our resources on testing every single athlete on every single team who have access to already some of the best medical care in the world and who are in peak performance and obviously health-wise are in a lot better shape than just the normal casual person. In their cases, especially for like the Lakers case and the Raptors and the Jazz and the Celtics now, just quarantine yourself for 2 weeks. It will come. If you have it, it will go. A lot of these players are either experiencing mild symptoms, very mild symptoms, or asymptomatic, where they're not even showing the symptoms of having it.
Like Donovan Mitchell.
Right, and then they could actually be at risk of being a carrier pigeon, so to speak, where they just can pass off.
Did you see that mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, was taking shots at the Nets for their testing? What was that all about?
Well, I think that goes back to what I was just saying. I don't think he wants those resources, and right now they're pretty scarce. There will be more tests along the way. There will be more medical equipment, such as masks and what have you, coming in the next few days. But I think he was just. I mean, I don't necessarily like him. We'll put that politely, but I can understand where he's coming from, needing those tests and needing those healthcare workers and that healthcare space in these facilities to people who actually do need it. The people who are above the age of, say, 65. So everybody who has those underlying conditions. So that includes like diabetes, upper respiratory issues, including asthma, high blood pressure. That's a big one too that a lot of people haven't. I haven't seen a lot of people in the news necessarily talk about this. So in the case of the Nets, I think a lot of the NBA testing was done strictly because Gobert had it, Mitchell had it, and there were a lot of players who shared locker room space and close proximities with each other in a significantly short period of time. So to err on the side of caution, I think players wanted to get tested just to double check and make sure, and then now they're going to go quarantine themselves away. And also, these players, we don't know who they encounter in their day-to-day lives afterwards. We don't know if these players live with each other. We don't know if these players live with their girlfriends or their spouses or their wives. We don't know if they come into contact with their parents. We don't know if they come into contact with other family members, close friends. You see how this starts to spin a significantly larger web. So, I mean, I could see what de Blasio was saying. I mean, I see both sides of it. Do I agree with him to a certain extent? I do. But for specifically the NBA players, I think that it's useful that we have so many players have been tested and we know which ones have been tested positive. So now we can kind of start expanding on who this person shook hands with, or who this person spent their time with, or who this person went out to dinner with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. And, this is really depressing stuff, but we felt we had to address it here. Hopefully moving forward on this podcast will just be more lighthearted and fun, as you just heard in the first episode with Nan Burke. Appreciate him coming on the show. So let's, talk about business as usual, which is the NFL. And let's just start with the big news, which was Brady leaving New England, going to Tampa Bay. Are you more shocked that he's leaving New England, or are you more shocked that he's signing with the Buccaneers?
I'm more shocked that he's leaving New England, actually, because I think they kind of tailed off at the end. I do. Do I think that they could have still very easily have made a run to win the division and possibly contended next season? I do. They still have Belichick. They still have a lot of that core infrastructure in place, even though in the last few years you can obviously see some of the cracks. Some players leaving a little bit more and certain players are but to be honest, I thought he was going to go to either the Colts or the Chargers. Because I think the Colts had a ready-made situation with a pretty solid defense and a very good O-line. And I think the Chargers last year were the victims of having Phillip Rivers throw them out of the game a couple of times and having injuries to certain key players cost them. So I think now that they're getting guys back healthy for both teams, I feel like both teams would have just made a lot more sense. I feel like now that he's going to Tampa, he's immediately stepping into a division with the Saints and the Falcons. So he's going to see Drew Brees and Matt Ryan 2 times apiece next year.
Technically, as of now, there's 4 former MVP quarterbacks in one division. Crazy. As Cam Newton's technically, he's still on the roster for the Panthers, although it's pretty obvious Teddy Bridgewater is going to be the starter there.
And I feel like even though the Panthers made that move to Bridgewater, just because of the injuries that you've seen with Cam in recent years, I still think he's a pretty solid quarterback. I'm not even sure that Teddy Bridgewater is a downgrade. If anything, he could honestly be a slight upgrade to what they currently have there right now. He played I'm talking about Teddy. He played pretty well last year for New Orleans in those limited amount of times, and he won games for them. Did he light up the scoreboard necessarily? He didn't. But was he a pretty good game manager who limited turnovers and helped them win a couple of games? He did. And I think he proved just by those few starts that he's capable of starting in this league as an NFL quarterback.
See, my whole thing.
So you could do a lot worse than.
Absolutely. Teddy is, who knows what he would have been if he didn't get hurt with the Vikings. Very solid quarterback. We know he was great at Louisville. And probably because of him, Lamar Jackson went to Louisville and had that success. But, looking at the landscape of the NFL here, if Tom Brady is really truly all about winning, I don't see how it made sense for him to leave the Patriots. Through the AFC is a much easier path to the Super Bowl right now. You got the Chiefs. That's really the only super team. Titans were good last year. Ravens, jury's still out on them. Colts, they got Rivers now, so that they should be better than last year. But the NFC is stacked. You got the Packers, who are great with Aaron Rodgers. Russell Wilson, he keeps finding a way to get into the playoffs with the Seahawks. The Rams, they didn't make the playoffs, but they were a good team. But now with that 7-team playoff in each conference, they would have been in the playoffs. The Vikings are really good. The Saints are a really good team. The NFC is just such a harder path to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize how teams bounce back year to year. So you might see a situation next year. We made fun of the NFC East this year. Next year, following they can win teams. You really don't know. As of now, we know the Eagles and the Cowboys both have solid quarterbacks in place with Wentz and Dak, and you forgot about the Bears too. The Bears have a great defense, and although I'm not really too much of a fan of Mitch, they got an insurance policy with Nick Foles, who we know Nick Foles at his best is good enough, again, to start and win games in the NFL. So, I agree with you 100%. I think that he, for 20 years, had a really nice, semi-cozy situation in the AFC East. He got 6 games against the Jets, the Bills, and the Dolphins. And for the most part, the Patriots were good for winning 4 or 5 of those games, and occasionally all 6 of them every single year. And when you're looking to make playoff pushes, going 4-2 or 5-1 in your division gives you a significant advantage. And a lot of those Patriots teams that won the Super Bowl, actually, I believe all of them, ended up having a first-round bye, coming in large part due to the weak schedule that they would consistently face in the AFC East. The Patriots had never gone through the gauntlet of winning on wild card weekend, the divisional round, and then the conference championship before winning a Super Bowl. There's no guarantee now that Brady's in Tampa that the Bucs are going to magically win 12, 13 games and secure that first round bye.
Right, and also it's only the 1 seed gets the first round bye now with the new NFL CBA.
Right.
So that's right. I don't know. I don't know if it's. You look at the offense, 2,000 wide receivers. That's great with Evans, a good win. Now there's rumors that that
I think
Antonio Brown might